After my last experience, my parents reminded me of another story from my childhood. When you're 5, your mind lacks the experience to make informed judgments or connect things which aren't obvious. Over the years, the details get fuzzy and forgotten. Speaking to my parents the other day, they cleared the cobwebs, burying the story. I remember now too clearly the story of Gurgles and Bugman. I just started kindergarten that year. Everyone's a friend when you're 5, so I had no shortage of classmates. But coming from a poor family, I didn't get to see much them outside of school. My parents spent their waking hours trying to make ends meet and didn't have time to ferry me from house to house. So I spent my early years mostly keeping to myself, playing with the random assortment of knickknacks from the shelf from my room. Being the short of money gave my family a habit of hoarding, so they hated to throw anything out. One particular item on the shelf was a small old fashioned TV set, a wooden veneer box about 2 feet wide by a foot tall. It had a curved glass screen that took up the half of the front panel. Besides, the screen was a large chrome dial used to switch the channels. At the top sat of the antenna formed by two terribly twisted wires. When my boredom made me turn it on, I'd usually get static and snow that glowed the glowing black and white screen. I'd twist the heavily clicking dial, hoping to pick up some local broadcasts. Mostly it would be from ghostly images and incarnate sound fragments, but one channel was always crystal clear. It was the Gurgles and Bugman show. Gurgles was a clown, but not a common one. He was worn a thin black suit that draped his tall, skinny body with a matching tie and oversized novelty clown shoes to completely his distinctive outfit. His pupils were completely black like polished ebony marbles, no trace of white around them. The black face paint around those eyes and across the cheek and mouth made him look like a manic, grinning skeleton. It was only the crazy crop of the curly hair sprouting off the sides of his head that gave him a more human look. As much as Gurgles freaked me out, Bugman scared me more. He was short and round like a hunchback dwarf and with a dark cape. He had a prosthesis covering his eyes to make him look like a fly, and he had a mouth that was rotated 90 degrees and opened from side to side. The show itself was like a candid camera, with pranks played on unsuspected people. It would be always start out with Gurgles and Bugman hidden away at someone's house. But Gurgles would face the camera, staring at you with his bony finger touching his lips. When the unsuspecting star of the show came into view, a laugh track would begin to play. You would see them go to their nightly routines, obvious to the conspiracy that Gurgles and Bugman had involved us in. We'd see them making dinner or on the lounge watching TV with their family or quietly doing their homework. Then watch as Gurgles and Bugman stole their pen or moved their glass or made things disappear behind their backs. The camera angles would change as Gurgles and Bugman would shifted their hiding place from the dark corners of the room to the cupboards, the ceiling, or under the furniture, all the while looking back at you and winking. The closer they got, the louder and more laughter from the soundtrack. Everyone went to sleep. A victim would be chosen for their prank, waiting in the closet or under the bed. Once their victim fell asleep, Bugman would crawl out and gently climb in beside them. His jaw would open sideways and would come out as a sharp straw he'd stick in the person's neck. This always paralyzed their victims because sometimes you could see them struggle if they woke and saw Gurgles and Bugman on top of them. The laugh track would play, then be an extra loud and uproarious those few times the victims awoke. Gurgles would make faces at the camera while the audience laughed, and Bugman would use a straw to drink from the person's neck. When the victim stopped strangling after a few minutes and the laughter would turn into claps and cheering, with Bugman finished, Gurgles' faces would fill this whole screen with the impossibly wild, sharp toothed grin. He then whispered, "See you again soon." The way all the black eyes pierced through the screen always gave me the chills. I hated the show, but would be always too afraid to go near the TV while it was running. One day, the TV mysteriously disappeared from my room. My parents told my 5-year-old self that they would sold it to pay some bills. I accepted without a question. I was kind of glad it was gone. But yesterday, when I asked them about that TV again, they exchanged nervous glances, then filled in some of the missing gaps of my childhood. Halfway through the year, Derek, a classmate I didn't know very well, had died in horrific circumstances. He was murdered in his bed with a stab wound around his neck. No evidence of break-in was ever found, so his distraught parents were taken into custody as the primary suspects. They denied all the allegations against them. At the time, Mrs. Nolan, my teacher, told our class, I had apparently explained to her that Derek couldn't be dead because I saw him and his family on the Gurgles and Bugman show the day before. When Mrs. Nolan mentioned to my parents what I had said, they had immediately taken the TV from the room, driving it to a junkyard, and had burned it to nothing but ashes and molten metal. That TV in my room, because it was always had been broken and was never plugged in the whole time it sat on my shelf. Whenever I saw it on screen, it wasn't from a station, so that's the story of Gurgles and Bugman. But I'm not sure if that's really the end, though. After all, do Gurgles and Bugman still perform their nightly shows for some unsuspecting viewer somewhere in this world? And if so, who will be their next star?